before she leaves, just in case. There we go. All right, we're recording.
Okay. All right. Well, it is 1:30. I think we need to get things underway. Let's see here. I think everybody on the board is here. All right. Jason, would you mind throwing out the link for the agenda if you haven't already?
Yep, I just posted it in the chat.
Awesome. Okay, wow. This is a spectacular agenda, by the way.
Thanks.
It's all fancy.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I spent a little time on it.
It shows. Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. So we've got a lot on the agenda. There are some things that we need to have discussions about business-wise, and then we'll move on from there. But first, before we get into any of that, does anybody have any announcements? All right. Well.
Apparently not.
Nothing major. Let's move forward. All right. So first of all, we have on the agenda bylaw amendments discussion. So the board has been talking about some amendments to the bylaws. And this kind of blends in with the second thing on the agenda, the notice of voting discussion, but that's more about preparing for a vote. But we've been talking about some amendments to the bylaws. We wanted to clarify a few things to make sure that everything is very clear. Plus, we are going through, we're approaching the time where we would normally switch office, but that time is being adjusted because of what we've written in the bylaws. We've actually clarified some things about when office positions change in koha-US. So we are making some amendments to the bylaws to fix that. Plus, there was also an issue in the bylaws that we were discussing up to the last minute yesterday about who votes on amendment changes. The bylaws right now state that the board votes on bylaw changes, but Fred brought this to our attention, and I agree with it. Doesn't make a lot of sense for the board to have all the power over the bylaws, because then gives us the power to just kind of go a little nuts with power here. So we have in the past been having members vote on amendments, and we want to make that a reflection in the bylaws so that we keep going forward with that. We want the members to have a say as to how the bylaws are changed and updated, so we don't go power crazy. So I'd like to open that up for discussion. What are your feelings on those things? How do you feel about members voting versus just board members voting on amendment changes? Everybody's muted.
What's the process for making an amendment?
The board has a discussion about it. Recently, last week, we had a discussion. Like I said, we are coming up on a change in officers because my term is about up here. We want the bylaws to reflect, when that change occurs, who's changing when, because we don't want all the officers changing all at once. And so, we had this discussion, we drafted an amendment, and it is my desire that we send these changes out, these amendments out to the members prior to a meeting. So you guys all have an opportunity to view the amendments and have fair warning, which leads into the next discussion about notice of a voting. That you have a fair warning of an upcoming vote, so that you have an opportunity to be here at the meeting and discuss it and voice any concerns about it before we go through with the vote. So the board has this discussion, the board helps shape those things, but we do not move forward with any of that without, hopefully, member approval.
So can anybody propose an amendment then, or is that just the board that proposes amendments?
Anybody can propose amendments. It needs to go through the board, obviously, to shape that, to help shape that. But then the final say goes through the members.
Okay.
Good questions. Anybody else have any questions about that?
Are the bylaws on the website?
They are. They are. If you go to koha-US.org, pull it up here, and you go to About Koha-US, you're going to see the green box that says Administration. It's under there. Anyone else? Okay. So one of the things that is not in our draft currently is notice of voting. So Jason, we didn't send out the amendments, the proposed amendments yet, did we?
No, we were still kind of working over them, so we didn't actually send them out.
Okay, yeah. So my desire for the notice of voting is that we at least get them the draft in your hands at least a week prior and give you a week's notice that a voting will occur. That way it gives you an opportunity to plan to be here at a meeting. We want as many members as possible to be involved in the vote. We can either have the vote happen during the meeting, or we could send out a poll for voting to just the members and expect those results back by the end of the meeting. There's a few ways we can go about it. Anybody have any thoughts on that, on the week notice, how we vote, because we haven't really done anything majorly official yet, and we want to kind of solidify this this time around.
I think
the stated goal of trying to maximize the amount of time in a meeting spent towards the discussion of the software and issues we're having with it, I like the idea of the poll being sent out with perhaps even a broader window, maybe a 2-day window for people to respond, so that maybe the poll would start Monday at 10:30 a.m. Central Time and conclude at 10:30 or 11:30 a.m. Wednesday, to allow for 2 days plus voting to actually take place in the meeting.
I agree. The reason I asked those questions about proposals was I would hate to be I've been a part of organizations that spend their time discussing bylaws and not discussing what they're there for. And so
yeah.
the minimum amount of time we can spend discussing issues in the meeting is good on me. So.
And like I said in the past, we're keeping the board meetings that happen the week prior to the general meetings like this. We're keeping that open. So if you do want to participate in that, in any of the discussions that we have there, be a fly on the wall, give us your thoughts. You're certainly welcome to do that, because we want to do as much of that at the board meetings as possible and leave this open for everything else. But this is a member involvement discussion, so we did need to bring this up here now.
George mentioned in the chat that I like the idea of a poll with a broader window to respond also. I don't even see why it couldn't be a week.
Okay.
And I also think like a longer time is nice in case someone, is out of town or something or can't make it
It also
to the
gives
meeting.
it also gives someone the opportunity, if they haven't been following the discussion until the poll, to go back and read and get an understanding of it and make an informed decision.
Okay. Anybody opposed to a week-long poll?
May I suggest also that the proposed changes be put on the listserv, which would get broader viewing than this meeting.
Yeah, as I said, we'll send those out specifically to the members, but because the members are going to be the ones that have the voting power on it. But yeah, we can certainly send that out on the listserv as well.
And encourage people to discuss them.
Yeah. Just keep in mind, those that have become members of koha-US have a little bit more weight with the discussion, because you're invested in this and your vote actually counts towards how things are going. We'll certainly listen to anybody's opinion, but we're particularly it's people that are invested in koha-US that we specifically need to hear.
Chris, to expound on that and take it a little further, do you think that in fairness for people who are members that they should have a full vote, and that anybody who isn't a full member should have like a half or quarter vote? Or does that just push people out? Just trying to influence people to become more involved in membership.
And you like to open Pandora's box, don't you?
I do.
I mean, if anything, I think it just encourages people to become members. I mean, I'm saying that as not a member yet, so yeah.
Membership is not any necessarily undue burden. It's $25 for a full calendar year. We're now in the latter half of the year. It's $12.50. The way everything is structured right now, only members actually get any vote at all. And if we were to implement a poll like this, email address would be one of the fields, and we just simply do not count any vote that is not from a member in good standing.
Margie asked in the chat, how many members do we currently have?
With the most two recent joins from Fargo Public Library, literally about 30 minutes ago, we are now officially up to 16 paid and one person who submitted the form but has not yet paid. And I'll be actually writing that person after the meeting to find out if there's some sort of administrative delay, because as the bylaws state, you actually are not a member in good standing until your dues have been paid.
Margie, if you've seen my emails going out recently for koha-US and koha-con, people in the koha community are very slow to react. Everybody loves the fact that they're getting something free, and maybe they're having to pay for the support service, but they're kind of have a hard time getting their bellies up to the bar for anything else. So it's going to be a long haul, trying to influence people to consider being a member of something that they get for free, and then also how to contribute financially in support of trying to take koha where they want it to go. So 16 is, I'm kind of surprised. I thought it would have been more around 30, but I'm pretty happy with 16 right now.
Yeah, it's a bargain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do you get that in people's minds that it's such a bargain that you need to contribute something? And membership goes towards that something. It goes to supporting koha-US and supporting koha.
Yeah.
Well, maybe some testimonials from those of us that are in the cherished 16 would be wise.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We'd love to be able to post those on the website and out to the listserv. So, and just a reminder, those memberships, we kept them specifically low because, yes, koha is free and open to the public, and we don't want to, capitalize on that. The membership goes towards the things that we are doing as a group, development, training. So that's all that is really for. In operations, and we try to keep operations as low as possible. We're operating on a shoestring budget, trying to, we're operating on loaned servers. So, we try to keep this cost as low as possible so that all of, as much as possible of the funds that we obtain are going towards what we are working towards. And we're going to have a discussion about the development process today, because we want to move forward in that and get that underway.
To follow up what Christopher just said, keep in mind that the budget for this year, because we operate on a calendar year budget, the budget is available for viewing somewhere on the koha-US website. I believe it's under administration somewhere.
Yep.
And the August report that we'll get to in just a little bit actually has details and a breakdown of our income and expenses through the end of the second quarter, which is one of the things the treasurer needs to do on a quarterly basis, is outline what's come in and what's gone out. So between the budget and this most current treasurer's or finance committee report, you've got everything you need to be able to see what's happening with the organization financially.
I have to admit, I'm just getting more and more impressed with how you guys have coordinated, and the way you've assembled things so far. Chris, John, George, Lisette, Rob, Jason. It really is amazing how this has kind of come together. And when this thing truly coalesces in 2 or 3 more years, when we really got all things pinging, including fundraising, and these things are really starting to work and jive, it's really going to be incredible. I think we're going to be influential. So I think this is great.
Thank you.
But to directly address Todd's question, I think it's membership vote, non-membership no vote, right? Is that where we're at? And I
That is correct
as well.
Okay. That is a stated goal of membership, the ability to vote on issues as they come up to the organization.
Yes, George reiterates, I think the bylaws say that one of the privileges of membership is the right to vote on issues. Koha-US is a cheap date. Fred, I'm not going to repeat what you said. So anyways, all right. So at this point, voting is strictly for members. We're still shaping, what membership means. Membership right now is going to, be specifically voting and helping to shape the development process, where we go with development. So those are the key things that membership is involved in right now. Everything else is out in the open for everybody to participate in. And if I've missed anything, please bring that up. But that's where membership is now. So what I've taken from this so far is, everybody's cool with, a week notice on voting issues, and it sounds like we're open to an open poll for about a week, unless anybody says otherwise. It was suggested 2 days, and then a week was thrown out. I think a week is fine. Anybody have anything to add before we move forward with that? Okay.
Nancy, you're quiet. What do you think up there? Nancy?
I like it. I'm a member, so
Right
I'm gonna vote. I'm anxious to get the development part going.
Yep.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. So we will move forward with that. We will hash out a few more tweaks in the amendments, and we will get those out to you soon. I don't think we need to, if we're going to do it through a poll, I don't think we need to do that, based on a timeline with this particular meeting. We can give you a week's notice and then a week worth of time to input on the poll from that point forward. And I don't know what Fred is doing there. Sorry, distracted by Fred. So we will tweak those things, and then I think we'll send out the proposed changes and get a poll going and move forward on that. So we have that underway before the next meeting, which is going to be at KohaCon. All right, development process. So Ben, I'm going to hand this over to you.
I dropped a couple of links in the chat when we started, so I didn't have to do it now, but one is on the process, which I think Jason also linked, and one is the form that we have put together for proposals. So just to start through the process, and thanks Jason for typing this all up. When we think about developments, we're thinking about, first of all, handling multiple things proposed at one time, and also, making sure everybody's aware of what they are, what their feasibility is, and so on. So the development process assumes that this subcommittee will continue to exist that will then vet incoming developments. So the first step to propose a development for us to fund will be to propose it. And that call for proposals will go out twice a year in January and July. And that hopefully lines us up a little bit with the annual meeting, especially the second one. Then as those, and that form, and thanks to Lizette for putting this together, that form that I linked is our initial draft of the proposal form. And it gives people an option to describe, or the opportunity to describe the development, to tell us how it will benefit libraries, and also to get some costs estimates that member has gotten already. And I think the idea here is to put some of the development proposal work onto the proposer, so the committee's not chasing down what developments we should be doing and how much they'll cost and so on. So the initial draft of that information all needs to come in on the proposal. The second step then is for this committee to then go through those and vet them for feasibility, to communicate with the submitter to get any clarifications they need, and then of course just determine what things we just can't do. And I think we do need to leave that to the committee because it's a complicated process, having done a number of developments ourselves now. The technical limitations and cost limitations will just limit the options right up front. So once the committee's gone through those, we would need to put it out for a vote. And of course, the voting we've already discussed, so I won't go into detail. One thing I will point out is that all the feasible developments need to go on there, including costs, along with the option to do nothing. And that's basically if members decide we want to wait 6 months or a year so we have some more funds to do something a little larger. That's why the do nothing option is there. I do think we have to have the ability to say, I'd rather wait until there's more money and we can pursue a larger development. So you'll get that ballot a week in advance, and then, or however we decide to do the voting, and then voters will rank their options. And we're going to use a ranked instant runoff system. That's described in the proposal. And not everybody here is an alternative voting systems geek like myself, so I won't go into detail on it. But the idea there is to get the best consensus, the one that most people would be happy with doing, happy committing funds to. So even if it's not your first choice. So once we have a development we're ready to fund, we're going to form an ad hoc subcommittee, and that will include the proposal submitter, the person who spearheaded this to begin with, and anybody else who might be interested. We want to keep that group relatively small, but that would be separate from the development subcommittee. And then their job is to finalize the spec, identify somebody to do the work, make sure we get the pricing, and then to monitor that development through its process, including making sure it's tested and signed off. And that hopefully should bring us sort of through the process of deciding what to do and actually making sure it makes it into Koha in the end. So are there any questions or thoughts on that?
Ben, do you have any interest in creating a page like what Bywater has if you want to crowdsource any funding? If we want to list something on the koha-US site, let other members see if it qualifies for the committee members, at least be able to post that and let other people contribute to it?
So you're thinking of taking the proposals and posting them for comment and contribution before we vote. Is that thought?
Possibly, or if we know that the money's not there, but they're hoping that they're going to be able to rally the troops through koha-US and see if they can get other people to contribute to it, give them an opportunity to go ahead and solicit.
Right. I think definitely it's a good idea to have those proposals out there to make sure that they're somewhere on the website and people can certainly view them before they're ready to vote and decide.
I think we don't want to reinvent what Bywater has already created, but I think ours would be a little different in that, maybe we post the proposals, but definitely we would have a page dedicated to show whatever we decided that we're going to be working on. And if we don't have all the funds for it, definitely, show that there and allow contribution, have a link to contribute to that development, that particular development. So, we're kind of, focusing rather than this broad spectrum of, everybody wants everything. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think we should leave the option out there when we do proposals that people can propose to contribute to the crowdfunding. So let's say we don't feel that koha-US can fund the entire thing, but perhaps we do feel strongly enough about it to make a contribution to the crowdsourcing or to solicit additional funds on it. But yeah, I agree with Christopher. We don't want to recreate what's already out there because I don't think that serves the purpose of actually getting things done into Koha. So does that answer your question, Todd?
The other thing too is, our goal is to see that a development is carried through, and we may not be funding the entire development. We may be a major contributor towards one of the developments that you've got going on your development site at Bywater. So, we may be just a piece of the whole puzzle, making that particular development come to completion.
Well, I see that still as a task of fundraising. If we see that there's a place or something that we need, it's decided by the committee that this is really going to be advantageous for all of the Koha community. That's a task that would be then given to us by the board to go out and solicit and see what we can do. And as far as raising funds and kind of rallying the Koha troops and saying this is something that we need and we need you to take a serious look at it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I guess I would just assume that waited till after we had made our decision, though. So what I don't want is for decisions to get caught up in discussion about which one is best, which one should people contribute extra to. I think koha-US needs to decide what's important for them, and then perhaps we go out and solicit additional funding or put it into crowdfunding or something like that. But also being realistic, I think the other thing is being realistic about the size of developments. So if we have a budget of $1,000 and it's going to cost $10,000, I think everybody needs to know that up front. So then we can decide either to wait or to do something else that's a little more realistic in the short term. So though I agree with your point, I do think we need to wait. I do think that needs to wait till after a decision is made. So that everybody has the information to make sure that things are actually happening rather than being talked about.
Agreed.
One thing that I would like to note, and I didn't say anything earlier, didn't come to mind, but now I want to make sure, because George isn't particularly, or isn't necessarily chairing this committee, as far as I recall, because you're kind of leading at least the development process here. I do want to make sure that whatever voting or decisions that are going on are being channeled through the vice presidents, so that we don't have this stuff happening without our knowledge, or without our blessing. We want to be able to be a part of this in some way, so that we know what's going on at all times. So
yeah, I think that's a good point. I maybe shouldn't have assumed, but do all subcommittees have a process for moving those decisions through the board? Is that sort of a standardized process, or is that something that we need to come up with per?
Well, seeing that George is usually chairing committees,
Gotcha.
He is naturally there, and it is going through us, but he isn't on every committee, and so it is important that if we don't have a board member on that committee, representing that group, that it is going through the board before any major decisions are made. George is saying a maverick committee would be bad. I think the bylaws specify that the vice president is the chair of all subcommittees, or something similar to that effect. Okay. It does say, sorry here, the vice president shall chair committees on special subjects as designated by the board, and steps into the president's role in the following year. So George, the vice president, needs to be involved one way or another regardless. So, that way we know what's going on, and, we can say, okay, let's move forward with this. I don't want polls going out. I don't want any commitments being made outside of the organization without board involvement.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think I totally agree with you. I guess I would say that, in fact, something that we didn't deal with here is how this subcommittee is even selected. And again, I sort of would leave that to the board to outline in the bylaws how they want that to work. Because whether it's a member of the board being a member of every subcommittee, or like you said, chairing every subcommittee, that's however you need that to work, I think is fine.
Yeah, because, I know it says that the vice president chairs special subcommittees, but if we get too subcommittee heavy, I can't expect George to be, handling all of that. So, I can understand when, George can't, do that, when the vice president can't do that, that at least whoever is, running this subcommittee is at least going through the vice president for these decisions, key decisions. Right. So, so we need to make sure that is, kept in mind, because it isn't necessarily outlined in here, but any of those proposals, developments, any finalization does need to be run by the vice president.
Okay, so the action item on that, Christopher, is that something that we need to update the bylaws to say, to be very specific about that, or is that something you need each committee to include in their specific process?
About changing the bylaws, saying the vice president or a board member designated by the vice president shall be on each subcommittee, and that member will report to the board as a whole.
That's
yep,
that's fine.
So Jason, if we can make sure that we reflect that.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't want, and I'm only bringing this up because it isn't crystal clear on this, and I don't want subcommittees to have to rehash those details every time we do something. So if we have that in the bylaws, I think that'll be sufficient.
Okay. So any other questions on the development process, the proposing developments, selecting developments, and following through on developments?
Well thought out, Ben. No.
Okay, I see a thumbs up. All right. Well, I think then if anybody doesn't have any issues with that, I'll leave that to, I'll go turn it over back to Christopher.
Okay, great. And George's thumb is up too, he says. So, yeah, thank you for all the work that you guys have put into this proposal. I think this is a great development proposal, or the flow. And I'm excited to move forward in this. And so I'm thinking if there isn't any objections to this, we will put this forward for a vote along with the amendment changes that we have planned coming out. So any comments on that?
Just that I did send out a voting link because we were trying to push this along, but
that's right.
If we want to delay that a little bit, that's okay too.
No, there aren't any changes to this particular document, so I think that's fine. We'll just keep that voting open for a week, since that seems to be the consensus.
Okay, and I sent it to all of the members that are listed on the website. That means that I didn't get it to Ben and Edie yet, but I'll send you guys that email after the meeting so that you can vote as well. And if anybody here thinks they should have got, okay, Marty, I'll get that to you too. If you think you should have gotten the link but didn't, please get in contact with us.
Great.
See, Todd, the voting already pushed ahead the membership discussion, so there you go.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting to note that since we started this meeting, we've had 3 new people join. Literally 3. They paid their dues, they submitted the form, and wow.
Awesome.
We need more people to come to meetings.
All right.
Thanks, Margie. Yahoo!
Thanks again to the committee. I feel like we're making some great progress here. All right. Let's see here. It is 8 after. Let's open this discussions for bugs, issues, etc. Anybody have anything they want to be vocal about?
So we're getting ready to talk about doing a development, not so much for koha, but maybe a plugin to do constant contact email address updates. So if anybody else is interested in that, let me know. We send out our newsletter via Constant Contact. We want to feed them emails directly from koha using the JSON feed, but it will take some massaging. So if you're interested, just let me know.
Do you have an open bug on this yet?
No, because it's not really. I think it will be a plugin rather than an actual piece of koha. So there is not an open bug.
Ben, are you using Bywater, or do you have somebody else doing the development?
I talked to Nick about it very briefly on Tuesday, and so I will be contacting Bywater to see what the cost might be. So
I was more curious if you found somebody else to do it, because that's one of the things that I think we should start considering for koha-US is vetting people who can actually do, maybe even at a better price. I'm not saying Bywater is high or low. I'm just saying maybe there's someone that can get things done a little bit quicker and so forth.
That's constantly on my list of to-dos, is to find additional freelance developers, but no luck yet.
Todd, does Bywater have a list of potential outside developers on your development site?
Not that I'm aware of. The only one that comes to mind is Jesse Weaver, who went to go work for a web company. He's the only one. I don't know that we actually have him still doing any work, but I think he's open to solicitation from anyone, especially as well as he knows Bywater or knows koha. I think he'd be prime for doing something like this, because there are some idiosyncrasies and quirks to doing work in co-op. It's been under development for a long time, so getting to know the community or knowing the community, and also knowing how the programming goes. If you need his information, Chris, I'm happy to get it to you or Ben.
Okay.
I think someone else has brought this up in annual meetings, but if anyone has a contact with a university or college with a program department, might be a nice internship or a semester project.
The calls I made last year out to the computer science department here in our College of Engineering did not yield anything, but perhaps there's something this year.
Todd, something that comes to mind while, when we were talking about this, I noticed that you guys put out a announcement about your new website. I had looked over your website. Very cool. I like the layout. Interesting titles that you have given yourselves, especially Nick. He calls himself the sonic screwdriver of the team.
He is, though.
Kyle's Lord of the Code.
One of the things that I had noticed, I could not easily find a phone number anymore, a support phone number. Are you guys pulling back on phone support?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Because it wasn't very prominent in your previous website, and now it's even less prominent if it's there at all.
I think, Chris, people have a habit of coming in. I'm supposing, because I've looked through the website, and as much as I like it, there's so many changes that I'm still getting familiar with it. I think you all can contest to that. But I think that we get so many phone calls, and we try to drive people to putting in a ticket. We also get people that want to chat, and they'll give us a paragraph, sometimes 2 paragraphs, whatever the issue is, and it's a ticket. And I'm like, I'll make a ticket out of this for you so that we can submit it, because we definitely want to have a chain of custody. We want to make sure that it comes in properly and it gets assessed and it gets evaluated and worked on properly. So I think that's part of the thought process. As I've heard before, if we put the number out there, people are just so ready to call and say, oh, I'm having a problem. That's great, and it is a problem that needs to be addressed, but that's a ticket problem. And it sucks to have to tell people that over and over, because you don't want to turn somebody away. You'll talk to them for a bit, but then you have to tell them, I'll put the ticket in for you if you'd like, but it's a ticket issue.
Okay.
George mentioned in the chat that they're noticing a post-upgrade issue with check-ins. Do you have a bug or more information on what kind of issue? There's a bug. That's weird.
I don't have any more information.
If an item is checked in, then it gets deleted in a second window when you check in a further item in the original window.
I'm going to write that down. That's
an error message.
Server error. Interesting. Okay.
I wonder if it still happens if you refresh the check-in window so that you lose that list of recently checked-in items. I wonder if it happens then.
Can anybody outline how this would actually? I mean, obviously, what happens is listed there, but that seems like a lot of steps, and I'm just wondering what.
Yeah, a damaged item.
Oh, okay.
It's immediately going to oh, this came back damaged.
Right.
We're going to go ahead and just get rid of it right now.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
ILL items.
So that's about 21168.
Okay.
I did note we upgraded to 1711. There were a couple of bugs that were kind of frustrating to find out about. One, it doesn't affect as many people. If you have added items through acquisitions, and yours is the last item, and you are deleting that item, is attached to orders, you can't delete that item. You can't delete that bib record.
Nope.
And what the catch-22 that we're in is we can't delete it. So they said, well, workaround right now is to suppress it. Well, we can suppress it from the OPAC, but the way that our EDS is pulling information, those records aren't suppressed. So our EDS is actually displaying the stuff that's supposed to be suppressed. So we got a couple little issues there. You know, we need a way to remove records that are tied in with acquisitions somehow without actually removing it from a previous order, because we do need to see those records. And we also need to have a way for EDS to pull those records for display and ignore the suppressed stuff. And there currently isn't any way to do that. I forget the acronym that they use for what they're using. But anyways, you know, we've run into that. So
I think there's a fix for that, though. Chris, because we have the same issue.
Oh, you do?
Yes, since we had an open ticket on it, and I went to pull up the bug report, and I linked it in chat, and I'm looking at it now, and it looks like it has been fixed and pushed to 17.11.08.
Yeah,
right?
Marty, did you share that link?
It's in chat.
Oh, did you? Okay, great.
It's in chat. Yeah.
Which issue is that addressing?
That's the error message when deleting the bib attached to an order. Because we have the same problem with not being able to delete those.
Oh, awesome.
So I think that should fix that once. We're running 17.11.07 right now, so I don't know. I'll let you know.
Has that patch been applied to your system yet?
I don't think so. Let me double check. I have a feeling it hasn't.
Awesome.
But I'm talking with Margaret this afternoon, and I will ask her when that might happen.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, we're still on 07. Don't have it yet.
The other thing that we had noticed is we had been noticing slow checkouts since the upgrade to 17.11, and there is, and I don't have the bug at the top on my screen at the moment. Let me pull it up. But there is a patch that addresses this. Let's see if I can find it. It's 12001, bug 12001. That has been pushed for a later release. We had it applied to our system, and everything is hunky-dory now. Had something to do with loading information that it didn't need during checkout. I think it might have been tied to notices, but I'm not sure. But it fixed the problem. We were seeing, it was taking a couple minutes to check out a bunch of stuff to a patron. If they had a lot of notices or whatnot linked in their account, and now that problem's gone. So if you are seeing slowness during checkouts, I highly recommend looking at that patch and having it applied. It has worked for us.
We've got a couple things that we're in the process of testing right now. The biggest one is something we've already supported fully, but it's moving or adjusting the rental fees to be a daily thing as opposed to a flat rate for a checkout period, which in our case, we check out hotspots, which will help our staff workflow if they're checking out a hotspot for 1 week versus 2 weeks without having, it just cleans that process up for them. So that's something that we're hoping to finish testing really soon. The other thing, one of the outstanding issues we have that's really big right now, we turned on SMS notices a while back, and Todd can tell you all about the fun stuff he did in the background for me with these things. But because of the way the notice structures are, if you turn on SMS notices and someone doesn't have an SMS, but they have an email, it still generates a print notice for them. I'll put the bug link here in chat so y'all can see it, but it's basically a total rehash and rethinking of the way the notices cascade and how that all works. We did ask Bywater for a estimate on the development for that, and they said it was going to be about $3,500 for that. So something that's outside of our budget right now, but I don't know who else has SMS turned on that's experiencing this, but it has turned into lots of extra print notices that then have to be shredded and taken care of because they're receiving emails. So it's a lot of extra staff time as well as the consumables of that paper and ink. So
we have SMS turned on. I haven't seen an increase in print notices.
We opted not to turn on the SMS for overdue specifically because that's where this happens, because you're setting it at the notice trigger area. The ones where you're doing it on, this is only overdue notices. If you do it on the individual patron account, then it's not going to create all this mess. If you've got a spec on that, we would definitely be interested in looking and collaborating on that, because we'd like to get overdue notices going, but we just
we might also be interested.
If you guys got a lot of questions. I don't know, Todd, what the process is for that, because I know this hasn't been pushed out to the community, the crowdsourcing page yet. But if y'all want to at least comment on the bug, please do.
Do you remember what's the name of the bug, Marty?
I linked it in the chat.
That's going to be this is going to be the actual bug. Do you remember what the development was? Have you got that? Is that going to be on? Do you have that up yet?
It's in my ticket. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I can link to the ticket, but I don't think y'all will see it. And I think it was just Jesse, chiming in on the ticket with the spec, which is.
Well, if they know the ticket number, they can send an email to Jesse and say, "Hey, we'd like to support this. Can you give us the information for it?" So if they have your Bywater ticket number, then they've got something to reference instead of Jesse.
Give me a second. Let me pull it up.
Thank you.
No problem.
Anyone else?
Nope.
These are good discussions here. I'm really excited to hear all these things, even if they are bugs.
I have one that isn't a bug. I'm just looking for where the actual instructions are. Our server, which I bought used, is 5 years old, so I think we need to start over with a fresh server. Is there documentation for dumping everything, user data, setup, bib records, circulation history, items, all that into a file and then restoring? Is that, I didn't see it in the manual, but may have been using the wrong words.
I have something that I developed for the little bit that I do here. I have no idea how scalable it is to a full production server, but I'd be happy to send you along the notes that I have, Fred.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe that's something that you could share on the website too, John.
I'm trying to see if it works, because right now what I'm using it for is when I want to test something in my collection finances, I don't dare try it in production. So the goal here is to basically take one of the backups that is run daily, export it out, take it and put it into place on my production server, do the testing I need, or I'm sorry, my development server, do the testing I need to do, and if it works the way I expect it to, then just go make the changes in production. So it's basically a one-way transfer, which is what Fred would be interested in. And other than one potentially significant problem, which I think I'm just not sure how to address yet, I don't see why what I've developed here would not be able to work on a broader scale. So after sending it to Fred and seeing how his luck is, maybe that would be something that I'd be able to put up there for people to explore.
Okay.
Okay, what is the problem?
The problem is with regard to file permissions, which need to be changed. Basically, you create a big tar file, you send the tar file over, but you have to change the permissions in order to be able to send the file over to the new server. And then when you try to change the permissions back to what they're supposed to be, then there becomes a problem accessing the database. And since I've only actually went through this process once, and that was in the development of the process, I'm not sure whether I'm just missing something or whether something can't be done or what. That's why this is still a relatively tenuous.
John, is it just a read, write, execute?
Yes.
Okay.
Because there are a series of permissions that are set. There's if I'm remembering correctly, because I'm actually be working on this later this afternoon. There's two big files. There's the data file, and then there's all the users and the permissions and all of that. And they've got two different sets of permissions, and you have to change them both in order for this to be able to work. And so generically, and not wanting to fool around with it, I just changed everything to 777, which is read, write, execute for everybody, which is fine for getting the data over. But when I tried to change it back to, I think, I forget exactly what the permissions were, but I changed them back. And then all of a sudden the database is screaming at me that it can't be touched or it can't be written. I forget what the exact error was, but it's something that happens on the target server, the server where the data is going to, and doesn't really have any impact on the original data on my production server.
Yeah, when you get that one figured out, if you can share it, that'd be great.
I'll see what I can do. And now this gives me extra incentive to get this done. The fact that it's also related to my fiscal close process here, notwithstanding, it's something that's been on my list of things to do for a while. And today it looks like I'll finally be able to get a chance to do it.
Right on.
Awesome. So I have a question for the group, something that we've been noticing. I've had a few reports on. Has anybody noticed lost and paid for items when they're lost and paid for, they're not being checked in?
Yes. Hold on.
Yeah, that's a new system preference.
What preference is that? Because we've been noticing that, and I've had a ticket in on that, and I hadn't had any resolution for it yet.
I don't know if it's related. I'm trying to find my thing here. Because we noticed it was the long overdue lost, because we had it set so that once it rolls over to loss, it checks in off the patron's account, but it's still charged to them. We were having the issue where it was rolling over, but it wasn't checking in. It was still showing in their checkouts, which was causing us an issue when we would go then to try to delete the item or whatnot. Let me see if I can find.
I think the system
because it's been supposedly fixed. So let me see if I can find the bug.
Yeah.
Oh, for us, we had to turn on mark lost item as returned, which was a system preference that got added, and we didn't know about it.
Right, but we have that turned on. So.
Oh, and yours still wasn't working.
Right. So
that's not good.
Yeah, let me find it.
It seems like this is something that cropped up that changed the behavior of Koha, and
Yeah.
it was out of the blue.
You should check the bug ticket on it, Christopher, because it was basically, why would anybody care about this? And then you see Nick saying, actually, there's a lot of reasons people might care about this.
I got it.
So everybody knows there is actually an enhancement coming, which will allow you to customize the behavior of mark lost items as returned. And Bywater was kind enough to apply that patch to our system, but it allows you to customize what returns an item, like where you mark a lost item as returned and whether that returns it or not. So sometimes we want to mark it as returned and sometimes not. And that will give us control over that process. So if you're interested, you may want to inquire about it. So.
Okay.
So I've linked the bug in chat, so if people want to take a look at it.
1805.
Yeah, I know. That made me sad too.
So, like I said, if it's that important to you, Bywater did apply it for us. So, and we're on 1711.
You're on 1711. Okay. I know what I'm talking to Margaret about today.
I know what I'm looking at today. Yeah.
I may have just destroyed you guys, Todd. Sorry.
We'll blame Todd. It's fine.
All right. We are half past the hour. Before we wrap up, I'm going to have to cut this discussion short. If you have other discussions, bugs, issues, etc., please bring them to the next meeting, or you can talk about them in our listserv. But we do need to talk about committee reports real quick so we can wrap this up. Fundraising. I'm going to John, can you say anything about fundraising since George is just texting? I don't want to have him report through text.
Fundraising has not been meeting because the basically same group of people is also on the conference committee, and the conference committee has been meeting at the same time the fundraising committee has been slated to meet. So there has not really been any development on any fundraising issue for the past 2 months.
Okay. Anything on finance?
The latest finance committee is linked in the agenda. You'll notice if you look at the PayPal balance, it seems artificially high. That's because it is artificially high. Donations towards KohaCon 2018 are also being received and stored by koha-US as a co-sponsor of the meeting. So those balances are going to look that high until we discuss how we can get the money over to Bywater in support of the conference. The other big thing to note is that the Finance Committee will be examining the creation of a business manager position, which would help to ensure the financial stability and continuation of the organization's finances, even as the position of treasurer changes. And so I'll be working with Candace. I'll put something together for Candace to review. I really hoped to have that together this month. That didn't happen because I took 2 weeks off at fiscal close, and that was the worst thing I could have possibly done. Hopefully by next meeting, I'll have something for the board to consider, and then a broader examination, which would also require an addition to the bylaw. So that would be something that would eventually come up to the membership for a vote. Also, as the August report, this report summarizes the fiscal year to date through 2 quarters. The August report, the May report, the February report, and the November reports are the big reports because it outlines everything that's been going on financially in the organization. So if you're going to take a look at a report, and if you're curious how we're doing financially, this is the report to look at because it covers half the year.
John, I like the member and ship. Get on the membership. Anybody? I think I see a marketing thing here. George, you're still there?
And that's all we've got for the Finance Committee.
All right. Thank you. Again, I appreciate all the work that you put into that. That one boggles my mind, so.
Glad to be able to help out.
I would not want to do that. All right. No news on the conference front, really. The schedule has been solidified. George is back on the schedule. So we've had all but 2 people that had put in proposals confirm. So they've got a full schedule. And we're moving forward. Our meetings are short because at this point we're just ironing out minute details. So, Lisette, anything to add?
I put the link to the schedule in the chat. They're also starting to put together more information on the cultural day, though I don't think that's on the website, but we'll hopefully have that fairly soon.
All right.
For people interested in that.
And development process, we talked about that. So I think we are good on our committee reports. Any last items before we wrap up today?
It's hard to believe it's been a year since Coeur d'Alene, the conference out in your neck of the woods, Christopher. It's just...
You said Coeur d'Alene right.
Hey!
Oh my gosh.
Hey, Chris, are you going to be doing any kind of a printout or write-up of koha-US that we can put out for the people that are going to be attending?
I can redo the brochure that I handed out the conference over in Washington, D.C. So
that'd be excellent. Whatever we can hand out to people and to make them aware would be great.
Yeah. Who should I send this to? I mean, I can send the original file and you guys can do whatever with it.
Send it to Jesse Zaro, J-Z-A-I-R-O at Bywater Solutions.
Does anyone know if the smoke from the California fires are doing the same thing to Portland as the fires did at that place in Idaho where we met last year?
It's not hitting Portland right now, but it's killing me here in Tahoe. I can tell you that. It's affecting my voice. It's affecting everything. As a matter of fact, I took a sick day on Monday and I was thinking about doing it yesterday too, because I was out in it way too much on Saturday and Sunday, and our air quality index is just off the Richter.
I wanted to mention real quick the website. If you go to the About page, we did add some links to that page. Something that somebody had brought up to us previously was we didn't have links to other things in the Koha community. We were kind of being our own island. So on the About page, below the colored boxes, you'll see part of a global community and several links. We've linked to Bugzilla, the jQuery library, the Koha community, Koha IRC chat, SQL reports library, worldwide users groups. If there is something that you feel that should be on that list, please email it to us and we will consider adding it to the list. But we do want to have resources and other parts of the community accessible through us as well. So.
Yeah, I suggest calling koha-US a neighborhood in the Koha community.
You make it sound like GeoCities.
George mentioned in the chat that the koha-US wiki at koha-US.net will be going away soon, just so everyone's aware.
All right.
A lot of great ideas, people. This is fun.
Yeah, good meeting. All right, Jason, next meeting.
Our next meeting will be the usual board meeting on September 5th at 10:30 Central. We won't have our usual general meeting as that's occurring during the conference. I believe I heard that the business meeting for koha-US will occur on Monday of the conference, but we'll have more details on that.
Monday of the conference sounds right, and I believe it's also the last time slot of the day.
4:15 p.m.
Oh yeah, Lizette gave us the schedule, so it's on there. So yeah.
Monday at 4:15 Pacific.
And just to clarify, officers are not changing at that meeting. That's part of this discussion that we had earlier.
Right, the bylaws state that the officer switch happens in the last quarter of the year, so that would be October to December. So we're still working towards that.
And that's new, so just keep that in mind that when we have our meeting there, that's not happening at the meeting. So,
are we still having the fundraising meeting, Lisette, George? I'm sorry, I haven't been able to attend in a bit.
Well, they were scheduled for the same time as
the weekly conference
meeting.
Committees.
So since we're all on that, we've just been doing that instead.
All right.
And talking some about fundraising at that. A little bit.
Okay.
Let's see. George says once we get past the conference, we'll start meeting again.
Sounds good, George.
All right. Folks, thank you very much for coming in today, and you have a good month, and we will see you hopefully at KohaCon.
Thanks to the new members.
Thank you.